Hello and welcome to my October wrap-up. So I actually managed to finish a lot of books this month, considering like the time and comparing it to the previous few months. So I'm really happy about that. The first book I completed was the Holy Bible, and this is the King James version that I read most of it. And I started this on October 4th last year, so 2015, and I finished it on October 4th, 2016. So I read the entire Bible in a year and a day, and I'm really proud of myself for actually completing it in a year, because I've started reading it like 3, 4, 5 times with the intention of finishing it in a year, and I just never managed, so I did now, and I'm so happy about it. After that, I read 3 short story collections by J.K. Rowling. It's the new releases that was also released on Pottermore, I think, and it is short stories from Hogwarts of Heroism, Hardship, and Dangerous Hobbies, and short stories from Hogwarts of Power, Politics, and Pesky Poltergeists, and Hogwarts: An Incomplete and Unreliable Guide. And I read them in that order, and I liked it in that order. So the first one I read, I really enjoyed. I loved it, and I think it was mainly because it had a lot about McGonagall and Lupin, and I love those characters. And then the next one I also enjoyed, but a bit less, and then the last one I was like, yeah, this is fine, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like I loved it. Then I read the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. I read it in Danish, and in Danish it's called Fra Helvedes Blækhus, which means like from the ink pot of hell. This book I read with my boyfriend. I made a video review for it, so I'll link that down below if you want to check it out, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know if enjoyed is the correct word, because it's not actually something that you get a lot of happiness out of reading. It's actually quite dark. It's about a junior devil getting like good tips and stuff like that from his uncle, who's a senior devil, and you basically just read all of the advice in letter form to this devil to be, and it's really interesting and not something that you get a lot of happiness out of, but it's interesting to see how we are tempted to do bad things. It's not just obvious things that we're tempted to do, but it's convincing ourselves that these tiny little things are okay even though they're not, and basically just like, I don't really know how to express it, but basically evolving from that, and then more and more things become okay in our minds even though they're not, and so it's kind of like a snowball effect. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it was very interesting, and it was a good thing that I read it with my boyfriend, because we could get to discuss this. And yeah, the chapters are very short. I wouldn't recommend reading it just from cover to cover in one sitting, but you do you. But I would like read a chapter or a letter and then just have some time to mull it over in your mind, and yeah. Then I read Username Regenerated by Joe Suck. This is a graphic novel. This is the second in the series. The first one is just called Username Evie, and it's about Evie, who doesn't really fit in, and her dad makes this computer program which means that she can go into a virtual world and kind of regenerate and find the emotional, mental strength to kind of live on. She lost her mother, and yeah, I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed the first one. I think the characters were more fleshed out and more real, and it didn't feel as rushed as the first did. So if you were a bit skeptical about the first, if you read that, then I would definitely give this a try, because in my opinion it's a lot better. Then I read Earth Psalms by Francine Rivers, and one more. She wrote it with someone, I don't remember her name, but I read that, and I read it in Danish because there has been made a Danish translation and I edited like for grammatical errors and stuff like that. It's coming out hopefully before Christmas, but it's under a bit of time pressure, so maybe not, but it's coming out soon in Danish and I really enjoyed it. Basically a short kind of story, one for each week of the year, and then there's a bit about, like, there's some Bible quotes, and then Francine Rivers and this other woman that I don't remember her name, they have written a little piece, like a memory about being in nature. So it's very focused on God's creation of the earth and all the many great things that are in it. So it's a lot about appreciating what God's created and what He has given to us humans. Then I finished The Sounds of English by August Van Boon and Tim Coterie, and this is an activity-based course in English phonetics and phonology. And obviously I read this for uni, and this is actually pretty interesting. It's a bit hard to get through at some points, and a lot of the the exercises are just so slow to get through because you have to write down so much. But it is interesting and I enjoy the course, so yeah. And last but definitely not least, I read Twelfth Night by William Shakespeare. This was also for uni, and I don't really know how I feel about it. So if you don't know what Twelfth Night is about, if you've seen She's the Man, then that is based on Twelfth Night, and there you kind of have the plot of what is going on. Of course, it's not because a woman in the 1600s wanted to play soccer or football, wherever you're from, but yeah, it's like the basic plot, and they've actually used a lot of the same names like Violet, Sebastian, and Duke Orsino. It's because he is a duke and his name is Orsino, so they just named him Duke Orsino, and Olivia and stuff like that, which is pretty cool, I think. And I don't know how I feel about it because it's kind of difficult to understand when you're reading like your second language from the 1600s, and I know there was a lot of help for words that were difficult to understand, and there were a lot of notes, but it just made the process slow. I think for me it was easier to understand because I'd watched the movie She's the Man, so I knew the basic plot going into it, but maybe I'm just not that much into plays. Maybe that's the reason, or maybe it's just because it's so old, so it's difficult for me to understand. But yeah, I think that was it for this video. I hope that I can read as many books in the month of November. I've already finished 2, so I'm actually pretty thrilled about that, and yeah, hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye bye.